Folks, America is in crisis. We're in a crisis about the future direction and the current direction of our nation. Will we continue to be the home of the free, or will we go on down this path we're on now, the path of total government control of our lives? The so-called progressives in both parties, Democrat as well as Republican, are destroying our liberty. They're hurting our economy and sending jobs overseas, out of our country. They're creating a dependency state where they'd like to see all Americans dependent slaves of the federal government. Now, the first question we must ask is who is responsible for you and who is responsible for me? Think about that. Who is responsible for you and who is responsible for me? If I'm responsible for you, then I can tell you how to live your life. I can mandate what you eat and whether you brush your teeth 3 times a day or eat broccoli 3 times a week. I can mandate those things because you'll be healthier. And that's what Obamacare gives the federal government the right to do. And if you don't do it, you'll be fined or taxed, as Justice John Roberts said when he brought down the ruling on Obamacare, which was a totally unconstitutional ruling. To me, was the greatest, it's the greatest example of judicial activism that I've seen, that I think has ever occurred. If I'm responsible for you, I can force you to wear your seatbelt, or when you ride your bicycle to wear a helmet. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a physician. I've worked in emergency rooms, and I know that seatbelts and helmets save lives. But the thing is it the government's responsibility to tell me, to tell you to wear your seatbelt? Click it or ticket? If I'm responsible for you, then I can mandate that you bake a wedding cake for a homosexual couple. And if you don't, then we will force you out of business and fine you so that you'll be destitute the rest of your life. If I'm responsible for you, I can control every aspect of your life, your business, all through regulation. My being responsible for you, which means government being responsible for you and for me, is dictatorship. It's dictatorship. It could be one single dictator, or it could be a whole governmental dictatorship. But dictatorship nonetheless. This is dependency. It is entitlement. It is serfdom. It is socialism. And it must be stopped. Now, if you are responsible for you and I'm responsible for me, this is freedom. This is what our founding fathers gave us in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. This is liberty, folks. I can live my life, and you can live your life freely according to how you see fit. We can do this as long as we don't infringe on anybody else's freedom or property. This is the founding fathers' philosophy. It is philosophy, I think, that is very pervasive throughout this room. But it's the philosophy of our Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. We're losing our freedom, folks. We're losing our liberty. This is occurring at all levels of government. How? Why is this happening? It's because we, the people, are allowing it to happen. We're even asking for it to happen, to ask for more government more regulations. How many times have you heard someone say, or you said yourself, there ought to be a law about that? What's the federal government going to do about this? Folks, those aren't the proper questions. We, the people, are asking for more and more government at all levels, resulting in higher taxes, more debt, and more loss of our freedom and liberty. In Hosea 4:6, God says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. There's been a systematic effort to dumb down America. Kids aren't being taught about the philosophy of our founding fathers and the founding documents. And I know my good friend Richard Wood is trying to change that about, but that is so pervasive, even here in conservative Georgia. People simply don't realize how far we've gotten away from the principles that made America great. Principles of a vibrant free enterprise system, unencumbered by government taxes and regulations, of personal responsibility and accountability, of a morality directed by the Judeo-Christian biblical principles that our nation was founded upon, of limited government that's constrained by the enumerated powers, and the sacredness of private property, even our private property of our money. We are very slowly losing our liberty. We are headed towards an economic collapse of the nation because government is spending more money than it's taking in and creating more and more debt, particularly in the federal government. But even here in Georgia, where we have a balanced budget to the Georgia Constitution, they do not count bonded indebtedness as part of that. As long as they can pay the interest, they're fine. And they've continued to create more debt. We've left those foundational principles. We've got to return to them. All three branches of government are guilty. And in fact, you see, even the U.S. Supreme Court only has 5 things that it can rule upon. They have no authority to rule on health care. They have no authority to rule on marriage or on abortion. Even so-called conservative Republicans are just as guilty as the most liberal Democrats. Government has become like a voracious wild animal, a tiger, that's sinking its teeth into every aspect of human endeavor. It has become a cancer, spreading into all aspects of our lives. We must put this wild animal, the government, back into its cage. And that cage is the enumerated powers as expressed in the original intent of the U.S. Constitution. Folks, it's time for a revolution at the ballot box. Personally, I want to totally eliminate the Department of Education. That's the only way we're going to get rid of Common Core. Now it's morphed into Every Student Succeeds Act. But we've got to get rid of the Department of Education. We've got to get rid of the Department of Commerce. Let's get rid of the Department of Labor. Let's get rid of the Department of Energy. And while we're at it, folks, let's get rid of the EPA too. As well as the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. Let's get rid of them too. It's time for a fair tax. And the only way for us to do that is for us to elect true limited government representatives in all levels of government. Since we still have a representative government, we must elect candidates that will stand firm against special interest, firm against the big government forces, particularly of leadership in the House and the Senate, in Atlanta and in Washington, D.C. We'll stand firm for liberty and freedom. This is what the Republican Assembly is all about, folks. It's about electing people who will stand firm on the basic Republican Party principles. Those principles of life, life from fertilization for all unborn children, all the way to natural death. Stand firm on liberty, where we can run our own lives and our own businesses without the government's intruding in us, in those lives and businesses. Our property, where we can enjoy the fruits of our labor, and government cannot take it away, take our money away to spend on unauthorized, unconstitutional functions of government. To have the revolution at the ballot box, folks, we must identify and recruit, if necessary, the candidates who will stand firm. And then go to the hard work of getting them elected, to get them the money that they need to get their message out, to get money to the Georgia Republican Assembly PAC so that we can identify candidates all over this state and help them get elected. We have to do the hard work of doing the neighborhood walks and the literature drops and the phone banks. And then once we get them elected, we must hold their feet to the fire. Make sure that they stay firm. Make them afraid of us, the voters. You see, right now they're more interested in coddling to the special interest and the leadership than they are afraid of us. But we need to make them afraid of us to what might happen in the next election if they don't stay firm. Eric Dirksen one time said, when he feels the heat, he sees the light. There are a lot of elected representatives that really need to feel the heat so that they'll see the light, and if they don't, they need to see the door. Folks, the future of America is in your hands, and we'll continue down the road of economic collapse, to slavery by an ever-burdensome government, to a loss of our liberty and freedom if we don't stand up. Nobody in this room wants that. All it will take is a group of very dedicated citizens who work hard and long to put our communities, our state, and our nation back on the right track. In Psalm 11:3, God asks, if the foundations are destroyed, what are the righteous to do? Will you be one who will help rebuild those foundations? Will you join in an army of dedicated patriots fighting to save liberty for our grandchildren and their grandchildren? Will you commit to being a force to be reckoned with by the politicians at all levels? Will you pledge your life, some of your hard-earned money, and your sacred honor, just as our founding fathers did when they signed the Declaration of Independence? Will you pledge to do all that you can to save liberty, to save America? If so, stand up. Come on, stand up. Stand up. Stand up for America. Stand up for liberty. Stand up for freedom. Now, folks, don't stand down. The future of America depends on you. God bless America. And let America bless God by returning to Him. God bless you.